Born Primitive Outdoor is proud to partner with Montana Knife Company, Marsupial Gear, Evolution Outdoors, Sheep Feet, and Capture Gear. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks to our sponsors. What's happening, everybody? I'm just back from, I guess, 8 days in the wilderness elk hunting, where we got our asses kicked a little bit. I was with my buddy Chris Horne and Levi Mayfield, who was filming it. I'm just going to go over a recap of the hunt, kind of talk about what happened. I'll have Chris and probably Levi back on later after this saga is finished. We got to go back out because we didn't get anything. It was a good trip. But anyway, just kind of go over day by day, talk about some of the gear I was using, some questions I got while I was gone and got back. So I was going in with Chris Horne. I've known Chris for quite a while. And Chris and I actually, we'd met before, but ran into him on the river this winter and started bullshitting. We started fishing together, and then he had asked me about, hunting together, or maybe I asked him, but either way, scouted this area quite a bit. Had pretty high hopes for it. Not that we're giving up on it by any means, but saw a lot of elk in there, and, probably went in there 6 or 8 times scouting, set up quite a bit of game cameras. Went in there with Mishka, my girlfriend, a few times. And so had planned on going in on I guess we went in on the 3rd. So 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. So 7 days we were in there total, I guess 7.5 days. Anyway, so Levi and I went in there a day early, and then Chris met us in there the next day. And it was, when Levi and I got in there, we didn't really do anything that night. Got the, shelter set up and, the normal stuff. And the next morning, we didn't want to do anything too crazy until Chris got there. So kind of hung on the fray, of where the elk were, I guess you would say. You know what I mean? Like, we could hear some elk bugling that first morning. And so... we probably had 4 or 5 elk bugle that morning. So we'll call that day 1 for Levi and I. We didn't go after any of them, just kind of figuring out, whatever, like where the elk are, where we might go, that kind of stuff. So pretty high hopes, right? Like, early season, you don't always get bugling. We had a pretty full moon happening at the same time, but 4 or 5 elk bugling, good sign. So Levi and I that morning poked around, which had been the morning of the 4th, came back, basically just took a nap. Chris came in midday, headed out that night. And I may get this a little bit crisscrossed because it's all kind of a blur as far as what happened each day. So I may have days confused a little bit. But, the elk, so we went out to kind of go where we had heard those bulls that first morning. The next morning, we sat that first night Chris was there. So the 4th, we went and sat a wallow in a watering hole, a couple hundred yards apart. No noise, nothing came out. Next morning, I think Chris and Levi had heard some elk bugle that night, I think. But they also heard wolves, which wasn't, not a good thing. I was having the best sleep of my life in the hammock, which I'll come back to in a minute. So the next morning, dropped down into the hole, checked a game camera, and had a big bull on one of the game cameras. But we also had 2 hunters, which we weren't expecting, because we're like, I don't know, 4 to 5 miles in. So we weren't really expecting to see anybody, but it happens, right? But it was midday when we saw them on the camera. Not, we were kind of hoping they weren't wandering around all day in the woods. And those guys did see us later on in the hunt. So I guess if you're listening to this, don't be mad at me. Please don't be walking around all day with the wind swirling. So, we were like, shit, hopefully they're not, climbing around all day. Because it can blow areas out. And I'm not saying that's what they did, but we saw them in that specific spot on the game camera, midday. just walking through. And so, needless to say, checked out a couple other game cameras that day. But that was basically the first day. And we moved on to another area that day and set up on a big pond, basically because no elk are talking. It's relatively warm. We're just hoping something comes and waters. And I don't know. We were there an hour, and Chris was like, I see a cow. And I couldn't see it, not like distance. I mean, I'm blind as a bat, but I couldn't, not because of distance. It was just there was shit in my way. Kind of shifted over. Another cow came out. They're kind of running around playing. They kind of went back up into the wood line, and I'm like, Chris, and we went to do rock, paper, scissors, and he's like, no, go ahead, dude. It's all you. So I went over there, kind of snuck down and around. The cow came out in front of me, and the photo I posted, I should have added more context to it. The photo where I'm like 30 yards from the elk, that actually is not a bull. It looks like one because it's so damn big. That was a cow. And that was probably the largest cow I would say I've ever seen. It had a collar on it, and the collar was definitely put on a long time ago. I probably should have shot it just because the collar was so damn tight on its neck. Its neck was pretty much bald from the collar. It was getting around fine. It was feeding. Obviously, it's big. Well, I sat there and contemplated hard to shoot the cow. And, Chris and Levi were back filming. Chris was called. Well, Chris hadn't called yet. What the hope was is, a herd would come down to the water. So I sat there stood there, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes maybe, with that cow feeding in front of me, which is, anybody that knows me, it was very difficult not to shoot the cow. Sorry, spit my chew out. I didn't end up shooting the cow. And I did get some shit in messages. Actually, one guy posted, I think I've changed. Biggest thing why I didn't shoot the cow was really day one. Number one. Two, we were a horrible pack out away from the trail. And as much as I like to eat elk and shoot shit, in my mind, I'm contemplating like, this is going to be a horrible pack out for a cow, which, I like eating elk. So big decision for me, very big. Not a very good trophy hunter. And the other thing too was, if this is how the hunt's starting, it should get better. And I really don't want to kill, Chris's hunt either, helping and, all the other things you think about. So I was also really hoping a bull would come down. So I was there 20, 30 minutes, whatever it was. And a bull did come down, and he was small, even for me, probably 24, 30-inch main beam, raghorn. I think it was a 4x5, 4x4, whatever it was. He was maybe 12, 14 yards. Poked his head out, half scared. Chris was calling. I think he just obviously came down, whether it was to water food and the calls, came down, poked his head around. I did go to full draw when he first came down, just because I saw horns coming through the woods. So I'm like, I might be finished up early. So elk came through and poked his head around. I went to full draw. Didn't shoot it. The cow walked up the hill, and that's the end of that story. Didn't end up shooting either of those. I definitely, between the two, would have shot the cow. The cow was very, very much larger than that bull. That bull was probably 2.5 years old. I don't even think it was 3 yet. So hiked out, and relatively uneventful the rest of that day, and really the rest of the hunt. But I'll go day by day. I did get into a little action, or we all did. So one thing I did want to cover when I was talking about the sleep, I slept, this first time I've done this of any length, in an AMOK, so it's A-M-O-K. I think it's from Sweden, and it's a hammock that's perpendicular to the way it hangs. And some high quality H2O. So when you normally hang a hammock, it's tree to tree, and you lay the same direction. AMOK is totally different. You hang it tree to tree, and then you sleep in a T. Little bit weird to get in. Very comfortable. Best sleep I've ever had. I didn't get cold in the hammock. This does not use an underquilt, although you could probably put one on. This has an actual sleeping pad sleeve. You put in the hammock with I got to look. It's called a Winter Light pad that they make. It's like a normal pad, but I think it has a 5.7 R value. I'll have to look, but I didn't get cold at all. Very toasty, extremely comfortable. And I'll just talk about the hammock now to get it over with. There's pockets inside that hammock. You can put gear, organize yourself a little bit. There's kind of a line going across the top of you. There's a bug net for it, which I didn't use just because it was freezing at night. Killed the bugs. And relatively painless. Getting in and out of it's a little bit weird. If I was going to do anything different, I probably brought a piece of Tyvek to put in front of it, because when you get out of it, you're stepping, you're not like rolling out of it like a normal hammock. You got to kind of teeter down. I probably would have put Tyvek down there just to keep my feet, or socks or what I was wearing out of the pine needles and shit. And, but other than that, I did have their, I think it's called the Svol, it's SVOL 13, their big tarp that they sell over the top of it. So plenty of cover from rain and everything else. You could probably run a different, tarp system, but that tarp system was pretty badass. Over the top. And then, in the middle of the day, I'd leave my gear under the hammock and under the tarp, so totally protected. But it was the best sleep I've ever had in the field. I was averaging 6.5 to 7.5 hours of sleep a night, which is really abnormal for me. And my sleep scores when I'm home, occasionally I'll hit 70, but generally I'm like 40 to 50. But I was averaging, I looked a 72 sleep score for the 7 or 8 days or whatever it was I was in there. So good sleep. The downsides, if it's horrible weather and really cold, once you're out of your bag, you're exposed, right? There's no cover as far as like inside of a 4-season shelter or even a 3-season out of the wind or whatever. It's pretty, you could get cold, if you're hunkering down in there, you're pretty much stuck inside the bag, not moving around like you would be on a tent. So more extreme weather, probably wouldn't choose that. But I tell you what, it was the most comfortable sleep I've had, and it's AMOK, A-M-O-K. I got the bigger tarp for it, and overall very pleased with it. And I think it's like just under 5 pounds with everything. So that's the pad, the tarp, and the pad, tarp, and hammock, and everything all together with stakes was just under 5 pounds. So very respectable weight. And I did get asked about that a shit ton with the photos I posted. So there it is. All right. So next day, when we're hunting, and again, these are a little bit blurred. We were hoping for like bugles at the very least at night, full moon. So we were thinking they were going to bugle quite a bit at night. But whether that be the wolves that had come in, or if it was those hunters running around, or just the time of year, the elk went silent. And we had one little raghorn by camp that would bugle. In fact, he tried to commit suicide one morning and pretty much walked right beside camp. It was before shooting light. We kind of saw him. Levi did, but kind of a weird bugle. Just assumed he was small. Levi saw his body, thought it was small. So that next day, hunted all morning. No bugles to speak of. That night, the next night, we went to a little bit different area. Chris and Levi went one way. Levi was going to film Chris. I went another way and kind of had a big overlook. I was a little bit higher altitude, elevated position, watching over a water hole or a pond. And about 6:30, nothing had happened. Weather moved in, but not bad. A little bit of sprinkles, clouds, but good evening for killing. All right, temperature was down a little bit. My wind was really consistent where I was. And so at about 6:30, I was in kind of a draw or a small drainage. And to my right was, you could gain altitude, and there was a huge bench. And I looked at the Spartan Forge at the aerial imagery of it, and there was a lot of deadfall. And I'm like, I should at least poke my head up there. See what's what. So I got up there. There was some small, the little foot tall aspen trees that the elk eat the crap out of. Lots of tracks where I could see they were in there pretty recently. I bugled, didn't get a response, kind of a mild bugle, moved around a little bit and got more towards the edge where it dropped off into timber, and just right place, right time. A cow called, just, and boom, fire back, bugle, and he was coming. And I'm like, all right on, this DOA, this thing's coming hot. Of course, in that timber, which wasn't really north facing, it was more northwest, but whatever. freaking deadfall, like an Abrams tank couldn't get through. So I'm looking down, trying to get eyes on the bull, knowing he's probably within shooting range, meaning 80 or in right then. But I'm like looking, I'm like, there's no way this bull is coming up. And so, taking a quick assessment, I'm like, I'm going to shift left. If he does come up, he's going to probably shift left because my wind's blowing more that way. If he's going to come up, shifted left hard. I cow called one more time in hopes that he might follow me, paralleling me on the valley floor, but whatever it is, 100 yards down. And he did actually, but by the time my fat ass got shifted left to where I could get down without making an obscene amount of noise, and not sounding like an elk, I did not see him right below me. Cow called a couple more times, and I'm like, okay, just wait, because I do have a shooting lane here, and if he does come, I can just kill him right here, straight down. It was like 46 yards with the cut. Didn't see him, and then he bugled one more time, and he was still to my right where I couldn't see because the timber came out in the opening. And I got a good look at him. Decent six, 280 to 300 inch six. And by that time he was done playing with Snyder. He just fucked off. I mean, nothing. He didn't blow out. He just kind of looked around. I'm sure he was waiting to see, an elk, obviously. And so I mildly cow called, bugled once, and he looked. He kind of thought, okay, maybe I was like, looking like he was going to come in. At this time, he was about 130 yards. Looked like he was going to come back in, but he didn't. He just walked off through the tree line away from me and, shit on my dreams. And that's the end of that story. Met up with Chris, Levi a little bit later. And, they had bad wind where they were, and went back to camp and didn't hear shit all night. Next day, headed back out again. And, no real bugles, that next morning, no action, and, trying to, figure out, like, is there places we can, trying to find areas where we can glass, maybe they'll come out, a little bit of cold calling. Nothing was really working, pretty common early season. And we were trying not to be too obtrusive into the areas that held elk where we are blowing them out for when it does get going. And cranking. So we were being very conscientious of that and I'm really anal about that. I hate, diving in and blowing elk out when you don't know where elk are and you're just kind of mindlessly wandering around or aimlessly. So anyway, that night we went back out, had some snow and hail. I guess it was more snain and hail, some wind, but good hunting weather, pretty decent wind as far as meaning it was blowing where we wanted to. Nothing came in. I got pretty cold. Obviously like, you get kind of that cold, chilled to the bone kind of a thing. So we took off before dark to go back to camp and the idea of, hunting our way back to camp. And Leroy, the little raghorn, we're almost back to camp. I don't know, 600 yards away. And, Chris bugled, he cracked back, but it was kind of a funky bugle, and then he barked quickly. Usually you get that, like, it wasn't the wind at us bark, it was the challenge bark, which was kind of weird, but like he barked a couple times, and young bull, whatever, we didn't get a shot at him, and probably wouldn't have shot him, and he was pretty small, and that was it, right? Got back to camp and rinse, repeat, did the same thing again the next day. And spirits were still high, but we were also making jokes about how crappy the elk hunting was. And if I should have shot the cow, that was brought up multiple times, which I probably should have. So, next day found some really good areas, but just not getting any elk to come in. The next morning, hiked even farther in the next day. Definitely got into elk in the sense of like when we were coming up, we could smell them. We sent, tracks or whatever, didn't get anything to reply. Pretty common early season, quiet elk. and I can just keep repeating the same thing every day. Just didn't get into them a whole lot. So we were going to stay like the 12th through the 14th. But we kind of made a judgment call. I have a meeting that I have to actually be on in 30 minutes today that I could have missed, but I wanted to be on. And then we have some projects that we're working on, designs that I'm heading up for this specific whatever expansion of Born Primitive Outdoor that I pretty much have the reins on. So if I'm gone, nothing's happening. So it didn't bother me to come back to work on these things because I'm going to go back in. So the idea is we're going to go back in. Mishka's in Virginia Beach. My girlfriend, she flies back home here the 13th, and then I got her food and stuff together. She's going to go back in with me the 14th just for a couple days, hopefully get some bugles. I'm not going to drag her all over Hell's Half Acre with me, but maybe she'll be able to sit a water hole with me. She'll stay with me 2-3 days. She's going to hike out. I'll stay in solo for a few more days, and then on the 19th with the tag that I have, I cannot hunt with a bow or with any weapon in this unit after the 19th until October 1st. So, but Chris, the tag he has, this is confusing. He can hunt with a rifle on the 20th till the 1st, and then I can come in with a rifle if I wanted. So the idea, I'm going to hunt evening of the 14th, depending on when we get in there, but the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th, right? I'm going to hunt 5 days. And, Misha's going to be with me a couple of those days, however long she wants to stay. But I'm going to hit it hard to try to kill one with a bow. And then on the 19th, end of the day, Chris is coming in, and we're, like I said, 3, 4, 5 miles in, depending on where we're camping. I'm going to put the bow down, and then I'm going to help Chris for the next 5 days with a rifle. So hopefully I'll have killed one by then. It's cold enough, just leave it hang. And then we're going to try and trophy hunt with the gun for Chris and shoot a big one. So that's kind of the plan and the decision why we made it, to come out. I'm going to get some business stuff taken care of. And I got the food packed and everything else in hopes that when we go back in, they're going to be, talking a bit more. I'll get one, hopefully, and then Chris will come in. Now, as far as, gear that I was using, got some questions on different things. Clothing-wise, I had the Ridgeline from Born Primitive, the Ridgeline Light, just standard crew, and then the Ridgeline half zip hoodie. I don't even know if these are on the website yet. This is the second edition of these. And I think the Ridgeline Light's 160 weight, the heavy's 220 or 240. So I had the Ridgeline Light on my top, and then I had the Ridgeline half zip hoodie over that. And then I would either wear the Quiver fleece or the Ridgeline heavy over that in the morning when it was cold. And then I went back and forth between a set of prototype pants that were gray and then the Frontier Light Bottomland pants. And then we all kind of had a mixture of solid colors and Bottomland. But my basic layering system for this is I didn't bring the heavy pants in, the Frontier heavies. For this hunt, I brought a set of zip-off, I think they're 160 or 150 weight zip-off merino bottoms, and then I would wear those. I only wore them once with the Frontier Light pants or the prototypes over those. This next trip, I'm definitely going to wear in the heavies because it was getting cold, but we've got zip-off bottoms coming. I'm probably not supposed to talk about that. I'm a big fan of the zip-off bottoms. You don't have to pull your boots, so I had those as well, and then I had the lightweight pants and the prototypes. I had the Quiver fleece, and then Tundra Light puffy and the Mission Flex rain gear. Pretty basic stuff as far as that goes. I don't take a ton of clothing in, when I'm hunting. Boots, I had the Alpine Pros, from Crispy. The stove I actually had that I packed in early, the MSR Dragonfly, which is old school multi-fuel stove. That's what we had at our little base camp in a big cook set, just because there was 3 of us. And I had packed that in early. Levi used my Argali Rincon shelter, and then Chris had an MSR Hubba Hubba. So, a little bit of everything across the board as far as that goes. Now, calling, I got a lot of questions on that. When we were cold calling, I would bugle every 10 minutes or so, pretty standard when I cold call. And then, when we were walking around, we didn't bugle a ton. Whatever, we just mildly called. We'd bugle occasionally, just normal stuff. One of the days, though, we did in the morning, went a different direction than we normally had been going, and did we did call in a bull, and it sounded like a good one. Chris was up to bat. Chris went forward. I say he's up to bat. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, Chris went forward. We were kind of going back and forth. The bull was pretty sure was going to die, right? He came in pretty hot. In that last, went silent, and then that last bugle had closed the distance for probably 200 or 300 yards to sub 100. Coming through the timber, Chris got eyes on him, and I'm like, all right, this is cool. And then to the left, I heard this fucking horrible bugle, and I'm like, what the hell? And then, the normal, cow call. And I was like, oh, fuck, it's hunters. And it ended up being those same 2 hunters we had on some of the game cameras. So that just happens when you're elk hunting. I think Chris waved at him. I don't know I'm sure they had to have seen us. We were 90 yards apart. And then we took off, went to a different area the rest of the day. Really good area. Didn't get into any elk. The elk sign. They just weren't talking. Cold called a little bit. We had a little bit of swirly winds. Pull back out. Probably picked one of the worst routes coming back. When you're on point, you never get any encouragement or happiness when you make the right decision. And I did not on this trip. Went through, and it was funny. I was like, no. I've been here scouting with Mishka. We can get through this without hitting deadfall. And I did not go the right way. And we went through several hundred yards of deadfall. Not good. In fact, I'll probably hear about the rest of my life. It was a horrible route. But got back to camp, fairly early after that, and went back out that evening and just weren't having elk talking. This is a horrible podcast if you're actually wanting to hear excitement. It's more of a long-term ass whooping. I did have, like I said, I had some people message about, I think even one guy posted publicly, I think must be nice to pass. And I do want to say, this is a general over-the-counter unit, right? This is a general tag public land. And I'm not a great trophy hunter. It's not like I'm passing up bulls like crazy. I'm not a great trophy hunter. It's just a matter of, it was the first day. We had a giant cow in front of me, but I'm like, okay, do I want to put my tag on a cow knowing I've got in Wyoming, till the end of October to fill my tag? I think it's like goes to rifle October 1st. So, I didn't want to screw up Chris's hunt, and I really didn't, want to pack a cow out on day one and fuck up the whole next 2 to 3 days because we're so far in. And I say all that. Now I wish I would have shot the damn thing, right? I do kind of wish now I would have shot it because I really like eating elk and we didn't get that much play. So hopefully this next trip in, we get into them. But, when it comes to like passing or whatever else, there's tons of guys, trophy hunters, pass up crazy amounts of elk. Other guys shoot the first thing, probably in the middle myself, but not a great trophy hunter. But it is pretty difficult to shoot. I've shot a lot of elk. It's pretty hard to shoot a cow the first day. When I say that, honestly, if that cow was beside the trail, it probably would have died. But we were in a hole a long ways from the trail. So curious to hear feedback on that. I chose to pass on it. Looking back, maybe should have shot it. It was cool video. You'll see it on the video. Hopefully there's a kill at the end of the video. Levi got quite a bit of obviously, video, I said video like 7 times in a row here, quite a bit of video over the course of that 7-8 days we were in. If we end up getting one, I'm just going to film with my DJI or my, cell phone in 4K where he can kind of patch in the cap off or finish up the hunt. Cause we are trying to get more videos out on the Born Primitive Outdoor page. Yeah, questions. The normal stuff. I had sheep feet, in my boots. I had those Alpine Pros, kind of did the layering system. Binoculars, I was running 8x25 compact Mavens. This next trip, I'm probably going to run EL ranges. I was running a marsupial gear chest, or what they call a kit bag. It's not a bino harness. So I had my calls, a little bit of survival stuff, and then those compacts in there, and then I had a rangefinder pouch with my SIG rangefinder on the right. I was going to try the Maven rangefinder, but I couldn't get that rangefinder to fit into a pouch. So I used a standard SIG that I've been using forever. This next trip, especially with Chris bringing in a rifle on the tail end, I'm going to have EL ranges. A big shout out to Corbin's Archery. Corbin's the man. Corbin got me that driver sight, which is on the bow, which I'm not supposed to be showing anyone, and I probably am going to get in trouble even saying that. But I've got that driver on the bow that I'm using right now. And then Corbin was nice enough, because I let Dan, my buddy, the dentist, use my EL ranges, and he likes them well enough. He's going to keep them in exchange for some dental work, which he's already done a ton of, and Corbin's sending me some EL ranges, which Jerry Shaw is actually paying for from a different trade. So that's a dangerous web we weave. So Jerry grabbed some stuff of mine he wanted a couple months ago, and now I'm saying, hey, Jerry, pay for these, and Corbin's overnighting them to me. So huge shout out to Corbin at Corbin's Archery. He's an awesome dude. Been a friend for a long time, so I really appreciate that. Other things, Evolution Outdoor, I had the hides on and the Whitetail Furies in my quiver, and one wide. Doesn't matter, because I didn't shoot shit, but that's what I had. And then I actually, on this bow, I always have an AAE Prophecy arrow rest on my bows. It's just got good mojo for me. I could not get the types of prophecies to fit on this bow that I had. So I actually had to put a new rest on that I really don't like, which sucks. And I'm not going to say what it is, but it did fine. It didn't break. I'm not a big fan of it, but if you end up seeing photos later, once we can talk about everything I was using, don't let anybody shit a willy and be like, oh my God, because I get that a lot. Like, does the other one suck? No, it doesn't suck. That's the only one that could fit on my bow. So that's what I have on there. But I do like that Prophecy. And as far as that goes, I get, there are some like haters out there that talk crap about me using a bunch of different gear. And just make sure, like in like transparency or whatever, companies don't pay you for a month and then stop paying you, and you use another piece of gear, and then some other company pays you. It doesn't work like that, right? I do get money from some companies, and other companies I don't. And when I say that, meaning, we have sponsors for the podcast. I have my own sponsors, and other stuff. I just kind of use whatever, I want to use, and I bounce around so I get to test gear. So, I just want to make sure people know, like, there are certain companies that do pay me, and they're companies that I like. Obviously when I say like, it's not like I'm taking money from crappy companies and promoting them. I'm lucky enough, I use what I want. So for example, optics, I use Swaro, Maven, and SIG. I have all kinds of, I have Maven's rifle scopes on my guns. I've got my spotter. I've got Swarovski spotters. I've got Maven and SIG spotters. I've got all kinds of different binos, and I just get to use what I want. And so if I talk about something and you've seen me use 3 different brands of binoculars in a month, pretty sure they're not paying me, right? I'm just using what I want, and then I can speak freely about it. And as I say that, that's not like a cop-out. I just want people to know, a lot of this stuff, I just like testing gear. So I bounce around, use a bunch of stuff. Boots are the same way. I've used a lot of Zamberlan and a lot of Crispy over time. And this year I'm using the Alpine Pros, and they've been great. But I did have sheep feet in. I always have those. And then I at the camp, and this was one I didn't expect question to get, but it is a good question. I overlook it. Cooler size. So I have the Grizzly. I had the 160 and the 110. That's more than enough for deboned elk to get an entire deboned elk. So I had a 160 and a 110 in my truck. It looked funny because I had the 160 in the back seat and the 120 wedged in the front, or the 110 wedged in the front seat. But that's more than enough, in there. So some of the other questions that I got were like, what do I leave? What am I bringing in? What do I leave at camp? The elk, the meat, do I have ice in the cooler? You can 100% put ice in your cooler ahead of time. I don't do that myself. And the only reason I just never have, it's not to say it's a bad idea, but elk meat, anything in general, as cold as it is in the mountains, the meat is not going to go bad if you take care of it correctly in the area that I'm at. And when I say that here, Colorado, it's getting cold as shit at night. And so whether it's freezing or almost freezing, hanging that meat up for 4, 5, 6, 7 days only helps the meat taste better if you've cooled it off before you get in the game bag. I've talked about this a bunch. It gets a nice crust on the meat, and it's fine for a long time. So like when I pack it out and get it in the cooler, even if I have to take multiple trips, that meat is going to stay cold when I put it in my pack for that, whatever it is, 4 hours to the truck. I'm going to throw that in. I got to make a few trips, maybe 2 or 3, back and forth to get it out. That doesn't worry me at all if that meat's fairly cool when it gets in the cooler. And then I'm only a couple hours, hour and a half away from buying ice. Now, if warmer, at different conditions, yes, put ice in your cooler ahead of time, and I probably should, but I don't, and I got that question. And then in my truck, I generally just leave some basic stuff. I have a spare stove, some extra fuel, extra socks, change of clothing. A lot of times I'll leave an extra shelter, in the truck. Sometimes I don't. Just a few things in case something goes wrong, and I'll generally have some type of, emergency repair kit, but I have one of those with me for my archery stuff in the field, a little bit more in depth, but nothing too crazy. That's what I leave. We did pack in whiskey a little bit early, thanks to my buddy Chris. So we did have a shot or 2 each night. That might be frowned upon by some. I am packing some Macallan back in on this next trip. We keep it moderate, but it is nice to have a drink right before bed, and that may be frowned upon again, but we did pack some of that ahead of time. So water system, I had the hard side hydration water bottle system, and I've been bouncing back and forth between that and the drifter. For this specific trip, I had the hard side with the hose coming out of it, and then I had a Nalgene foldable water bottle as well, because there's not a ton of water. For water purification in this trip, there's not a lot of clean water in there, so I didn't do the standard Sterapin or the Aquamira tabs. We certainly could have, but this is the first hunt in a long time that I brought a pump, and it's the Katadyn Hiker Pro. Chris brought one in as well. It does take quite a while to fill up 20 liters of water, which is what we had for base camp, because we all had bladders, 6 liters or whatever, and then we'd go down, fill our bottles, and pump them all up. And it's just, again, we could 100%, if we needed to, use a Sterapin or pills, but there's a lot of Squidwards in this water. It's a really poor water source for human consumption. Great for elk. So Katadyn Hiker Pro. Again, I use the MSR Dragonfly for a stove, and the Amok Shelter sleeping bag. I actually Levi borrowed my Argali 20 degree, which in my opinion is, if not one of the best sleeping bags on the market right now. And then I actually had my Western Mountaineering Badger that has 5 ounces of overfill and Gore-Tex Windstopper. I did that because I was sleeping in a hammock and I was a little bit worried about freezing my balls off, which I did not. I probably pretty easily could have got away with that 20 degree Argali, but Levi borrowed it. Levi's had moved recently, or is moving and building a house, and so he had a lot of his stuff in a Connex, so he had borrowed a few things of mine. I can't talk about the bow I'm shooting. In fact, I probably said too much already, but nothing like crazy conspiracy shit going on here, people. It's just that time of year. New bows are coming out, and I'm trying out the new one. I will say it is fucking badass, and it's the first time I've been impressed with a bow this much in a while, and I like it even better than one of the bows in the last few years that I thought was like the best hunting bow on the market. But here in the next month or two, I'll be able to talk about it. I don't think I'm missing anything too much other than that. I probably am, and I'm not really thinking about. But hopefully we're going back in. Hopefully I do kill an elk. It has been very nice to be excited about elk hunting. As most people know, I've made some major life changes in the last year. Very happy with those. This is about the happiest I've ever been. Mishka's been great. My girlfriend's been awesome. And, just kind of have some pep in my step when it comes to hunting again. And working with BP has been great. There's a book called Necessary Endings. I think everybody should probably listen to. It's a very good book. And a guy, I don't know if he would want me to mention his name, but a very, very awesome dude, good friend of mine. He's got a bow shop back east in New York, had told me to listen to this book. He had to make some life changes, and you make life changes. It doesn't mean what you were doing before was bad, good, whatever. It's just certain times. It's certain times to let people go, make some changes, whatever else. And those changes have definitely made me, I'm like thrilled about fly fishing again and fishing in general, hunting. It's been awesome to be out in the woods, even with getting our ass kicked, which I'm not, not sounding arrogant. I generally don't get my ass kicked hunting. I usually kill something, and ass whoopings are good for you. And I got it, and it's been fun. I mean, it was fun every day. Chris Horne and Levi were fucking awesome. Chris Horne and Levi are both amazing humans. They're great to hang out with. It's just a good time. So anyway, I'm rambling on. It's only been 40 minutes, but I will catch up. There may be a part 2 and 3 to this, but I appreciate everyone tuning in, and I can't thank all the support from the listeners as well as the sponsors, the companies that work with us. Let's just listing them off. Hopefully I don't miss anyone. Capture Gear, that's the phone scope system that I use, the digiscoping system. That thing is badass. I didn't need it on this trip, right? We're hunting elk and fucking timber, right? But the Capture Gear, something new I tried this year. I cannot suggest that enough. Sheep Feet, Marsupial Gear. I love their bino harnesses, as well as that kit bag. Some of the other things they offer, their bow case, which is actually the first time I used it was this trip. And then, Turtle Box Audio. I didn't use the Turtle Box in the field, but I have them all over my house. I work out with them. Grizzly Coolers, another of our partners. Gator's Eyewear. I cannot say enough about Grizzly and Gator. Gator, for example, with the glasses that I use, they are able to get me prescription glasses that are transitioned, so they darken up and shade when I go out. I also have polarized prescription glasses, so they've been amazing. And then obviously Hoyt, Evolution, the different bow companies and archery companies that we work for, are great. And I'm probably forgetting some people. Like I said, Corbin has been awesome. He's not like a partner of ours, but he's been a great friend and great to deal with. Who else am I forgetting? Oh, gas bowstrings. That is a big question that I get, is bowstrings. Eric Griggs has been an amazing dude, to me. And I used to shoot America's Best on my recurves. They're a great string. But on compound, gas bowstrings have been amazing, for me. So that's another company. Oh, and I almost forgot, Montana Knife. Josh Smith, I deal with Jessica a ton. She's an amazing person. I love her to death. She's always a pleasant to deal with. But Josh has just been, an amazing human. He's been burnt by some people, which, sucks. But they came out with a new jackstone, which is something he and I designed. And then they came out with a chopper, that giant knife I had him build for me for something I didn't end up needing it for. But that chopper, I guess it did really well as in the field. And it's just basically a giant, I say bushcrafting, but not really bushcrafting, just it's a giant chopper, like for whacking heads off, chopping trees down. The thing's been awesome. I originally had asked him to build that. We came up with the design, and I didn't think he'd ever sell it. Lauren Zara used it on Naked and Afraid for a bit. I've been using it for a year, and so, I want to, special thanks to Josh Smith. He's been a very good friend, to me, and as well as Jessica. She's been amazing to deal with as well. So I'm probably forgetting some company and people, so I apologize. I'll catch them on the next ones, next trip. But, yeah, I appreciate everyone. Thank you very much. And everyone, please pray for me that I actually kill an elk on this next trip. I'll talk to you guys later. And gals.